I'm Alan Spears with Occupy Democrats, and it has been a wild past 48 hours, but in some breaking news, we have a major update about the would-be assassin of Donald Trump. Yes, if you somehow managed to miss this breaking news, there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump just the other day. This assassination attempt took place in Butler, Pennsylvania during a rally Trump was holding. The gunman managed to climb up on top of a nearby building just around 150 meters away and perched himself up there with his AR-15 style rifle. Now, typically, buildings like that are swept through by Secret Service or have their own agents stationed in or outside of the building to ensure that no one can, like the gunman did, climb up on it or enter it unnoticed. But we've recently learned that the Secret Service actually leaned more on the local law enforcement for this sort of sweep rather than conducting it themselves. Now, the Secret Service has stated that local law enforcement were supposed to be stationed at a post around that building. However, the local law enforcement themselves were uncertain as to where they were specifically supposed to be posted. Now, it is standard procedure and quite common for the Secret Service to work with local law enforcement to act as a sort of supplemental force for their own. However, clearly there was some sort of breakdown in communication as the gunman was successful in climbing up on top of the building and taking a few shots off before he was ultimately killed. Now, it's entirely possible that there may be an investigation launched against the local law enforcement and against the Secret Service to try to understand and figure out where exactly this breakdown happened and this breach occurred. That said, there is already an investigation ongoing into the shooter. Now, in the hours following the assassination attempt, the FBI and authorities were able to successfully identify the gunman as Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old from the local area. Now, as of this recording, the investigation is underway. However, the FBI have yet to find a really solid motive as to why Crooks would want to attempt such a thing. Now, even though the motivation has yet to be determined by the FBI, we've recently learned some key details and had some previous classmates of Crooks come forward to discuss who he was as a person, and that is actually some of the breaking news we're going to be covering today. Now, according to some financial statements that have been obtained, Crooks actually donated $15 to a Progressive Political Action Committee, or PAC, back when he was 17 years old. Now, in a move that would seemingly contradict his political beliefs based off of the donation, Crooks actually registered to vote as a Republican a few months after that donation. Now, in addition to these financial records and the voter registration, one of Crooks' former classmates, Max R. Smith, recently stepped forward and provided a bit of insight to who exactly Crooks was. Now, Smith actually mentioned that he and Crooks shared a U.S. history class together. Speaking to that, Smith said, quote, "The majority of the class were on the liberal side, but Tom, no matter what, always stood his ground on the conservative side. That's still the picture I have of him, just standing alone on one side while the rest of the class was on the other." Now, a number of different students and former classmates of Crooks have come forward to provide their own insight and thoughts on who exactly Crooks was. However, these accounts have varied pretty significantly. To make matters even more obscured, Crooks' father is actually registered as a libertarian and his mother is a Democrat, and both of them work as behavioral health counselors. Now, despite the fact that Crooks' family leans more left and that he had previously donated to a progressive PAC, it does seem that Crooks was at least more conservative-minded. Now, one of Crooks' former classmates, Jason Kohler, came forward and mentioned that Crooks very often wore hunting outfits, so more than likely camo, and an outfit that typically is something sported by more conservative people. However, that is not definitive. Now, Crooks' father was actually the legal owner of the AR-15 style weapon that he utilized to try to assassinate Trump. It would seem that Crooks himself was very much a gun enthusiast, however, as he was actually wearing a Demolition Ranch t-shirt upon his death. The Demolition Ranch is itself a YouTube channel for gun enthusiasts. So all of that is to say that it more seems like Crooks himself is a conservative rather than a Democrat or liberal or a progressive, which that itself is incredibly fascinating to me considering Donald Trump is the Republican or the conservative presidential candidate. I find it incredibly fascinating that you have so many politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are calling for a second civil war or have speculated that this was an attempt by the Democrats to kill Trump, the truth of the matter would seem that it was one of their own. Now, it is possible that the investigation will turn up some new evidence or provide some insight as to why Crooks did this. However, for the time being, it really does seem like one of their own. A conservative tried to kill the conservative candidate for the presidency. It really does seem like the overall conservative movement within this country is starting to fracture and splinter off into various subgroups. And unfortunately, one of those subgroups seems very intent on using violence. And while I have no problem stating that I myself, and pretty much all of us here on Occupy Democrats, absolutely loathe Donald Trump and everything he stands for and represents politically and otherwise, killing him is not the answer. Killing Trump will not kill the MAGA movement, nor will it stop the conservatives from finding another candidate who represents their values. Frankly, conservatives need to grow the hell up and stop always resorting to violence and threat to try to get their way. When you kill others to try to silence them, or you threaten bloodshed or violence, that tells me everything I need to know. You don't have a counter or an answer or a response to the other side. You just want them to shut up because you don't like them and because you're a coward. This reckless endorsement and obsession surrounding guns and death from the right needs to stop. You all need to grow up. We are living in a civilized society, allegedly. Let's maybe act like it. Conservatives need to understand that no one's trying to take their guns. Go knock yourself out. Go trade them. Go hunting. Go to the shooting range. Enjoy them in a safe and responsible manner. But stop using them to threaten others and kill others just to try to get your way. Now, it is going to be very fascinating to see how this assassination attempt ultimately plays out for Trump. Historically, assassination attempts against a president have only ever typically endeared them further to the public, though that is not definitive. And with the polls showing that Trump and Biden are incredibly close and it is going to be a very tight race come this November, the one thing is certain: violence is not going to be a solution.